Hello guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing a scenario provided us today by Tómas on Discord. Before we get into what this scenario will be, let me say a few things about video recommendations. For the record, I want you to send me scenarios, because sometimes I'm not sure what to do. But if you want to send me some scenarios, just comment it on the YouTube channel. It's harder to maintain if you message me on a Discord server. It's fine if you private message me. The two main methods I would like to receive scenarios are YouTube comments and direct messages on Discord. Once this channel gets more subscribers, I'll make a Discord server and then there'll be a specific chat for scenarios that I'll take in. But for now, just comment it or message me directly. How I'm gonna make new videos from this is I'm going to make a list of scenarios that you have provided, and once every couple of videos I'll have a straw poll in the description to pick out of a choice of 4. I'm not going to have it this video, but I'll be sure to mention it in the video if we have it. Now that we have it out of the way, let's get on with the video. So after that monologue, you may be asking, what's the scenario? But you can wait for a second, because we're about to get into a history session. South Africa, at least in its early days, had a big culture problem. South Africa was first colonized by the Dutch. Then once the Napoleonic Wars kicked in and the Netherlands became the Batavian Republic, Britain seized the colony. Going back to that culture problem, the British enacted a whole bunch of new anti-Dutch laws, and the Dutch were forced to move in the inland. They declared multiple republics, and they declared themselves Boers. And the British didn't like this familiar revolutionary taste in their mouths, and so the Boer Wars began. The first one was against the annexation of Ou Afrikaner Resistance, or the ZAR. They were going to go through the annexation due to a fear of another group, the Zulu. Fun fact. Well, not so fun fact. The Zulu had also done some culture displacement earlier, with them fighting a bunch of other tribes, forcing the other tribes to disperse. Very few of them were able to fight off, but Lesotho was able to, so good job, Lesotho. The fear of the Zulu had fueled many of the decisions of the South Africa region, but it's been tried and tested with a little bit of European nationalism. Any native group can be crushed, and the Zulu were, which gave the ZAR a chance to fight for independence. This caused the first Boer War, and the ZAR, alongside the Oranje Vrystaat, were somehow able to fight off the British. The British guaranteed the independence of the two colonies, and around 2 decades later, the second Boer War had started. The ZAR had found gold in their territory, which not only saved their dying economy, but also threatened the British dominance in the South Africa region, especially with the new German colonization in Namibia. This caused tension which finally sparked into the Second Boer War, and at first it was looking like it would be a second Boer victory, with them sieging important towns due to catching the British off guard. But when the British reinforcements came, the British won, annexing the ZAR and the Oranje Vrystaat. There was also a third Boer War, but it's not really a third Boer War. It was sort of connected to the second. It wasn't its own separate declared war, it was just a guerrilla war attached onto the second. Some people discern it as a third though. And that ended in 1902. There were multiple failed rebellions after that, but none had succeeded. Even though I didn't cover it a lot, race problems were a very big problem. Everyone knows about the apartheid, but I'm not going to go into that for reasons. But the person who made this scenario, Tómas, has guided my non-existent eyes towards a specific group of people called the Afrikaner Resistance Movement. And the scenario was if the party got enough support in the 90s to do something that I shall reveal in a second. First, we need to look at the party for a sec. Shit. Okay, just by judging by some of this stuff, this is looking similar to a specific German National Socialist movement, which I shall not name. After looking into them, I figured out that what they would do if they got enough support is not that interesting. I thought that if they got a lot of support, which is part of the scenario Tómas told me, that they would take all of South Africa. But what Tómas told me to make a scenario on makes more sense. They would essentially make a new Boer state that I talked about earlier. It would be an ethno-state though, obviously, and that's essentially all it would be. Some Western country could wage a war on it due to it being an ethno-state, but probably not. Western countries don't really care a lot about African politics, unless they're involved in the Middle East. I'm going to call this country the Afrikaner Vrystaat, or what I will use in English, the Afrikaner Free State. Think of the Afrikaner Free State as a more weird version of North Korea. A random, possible dictatorship out in the middle of what Westerners would call nowhere, and nobody can do anything to it. Except that nobody can do anything to it is different from North Korea. With the Afrikaner Free State, it's just that nobody cares. They probably wouldn't commit genocide against the very little Africans in their territory. The very little Africans in their territory would probably get harassment. Apartheid would still be a thing. But other than that, the worst thing that can happen to it is sanctions from the UN. So to make this video not just end here, let's go crazy with this scenario. The Afrikaner Free State turns itself not into a white democracy, but an ethnic dictatorship. Mass purges of all blacks occur, and even Brits who live there are subject to slavery, beatings, torture, or outright killings. Meanwhile, in South Africa, in response to the making of the Afrikaner Free State, African communists start to take over, and South Africa quickly falls into revolt, and they become the Cape Commune. Tensions increase when the Cape Commune starts to make anti-white policies, essentially resulting in a reverse apartheid in the Cape Commune. The rest of the world does not know about these concentration camps until photos are taken of them from a citizen from Lesotho. And then he reports it to the US government. The UN holds a meeting to sanction the two countries, or to possibly send peacekeeping forces there. So they try to set up two separate peace treaties to hopefully blockade both the Afrikaner Free State and the Cape Commune. But Russia blocks the Afrikaner Free State sanctions, and China blocks the Cape Commune sanctions. Both countries want to set up specific trade deals on them to influence Africa, but that's the only reason. Tensions explode when the Cape Commune declares war against the Afrikaner Free State when an Afrikaner sneaks over the border and murders some South Africans. The war essentially becomes a Korean War, with the Cape Commune first pushing heavily into the Afrikaner Free State, but then with help from Russia they push back and almost take Cape Town. But China and Russia's relationship has deteriorated, and China does not want Russia to gain influence in the region, so China helps out the Cape Commune. Eventually the borders kind of go back to normal and they reach a stalemate and an armistice is signed. In modern day, the relationship of these two states is widely negative, but nothing can be done due to more powerful countries using it as a chessboard, and that's all I can think of. I know the scenario is silly, but I said it was going to be silly, so if you don't want a silly scenario, then you shouldn't have watched it. Thank you again to Tómas for this scenario idea, and sorry if I sound sick, because I am. Anyways, bye.
Singen je bossen, ihre besonders mij. Ou Afrikaner